Hello everyone and welcome to a very special video that I'm extremely excited to release. Instead of doing a regular team or round mock draft following the combine, I thought it'd be very interesting to do something that I'm calling a dual mock draft, where after this Russell Wilson trade from the Seattle Seahawks to Denver Broncos, I thought we could take a look at what both sides are going to be looking like after this recent draft. I'll be going through all 7 rounds for both teams, with no trades, as trades are more than difficult beyond like round 1 or 2 to predict. And we're going to be comparing the two outcomes between the teams. The mock engine used will be the PFF mock draft simulator for the other 30 teams in the league. This way, I have zero influence over how the draft board actually falls for each team, and I can actually evaluate each pick individually. Let's get to it. Seattle Seahawks, pick 9. The heir apparent to Wilson is here for Seattle. They clearly loved Willis so much in their interviews with him that they were totally alright granting Wilson his wish to go to Denver instead. Willis has the strong arm and elite ability to scramble that teams love. If he can speed up and enhance that processor while keeping his eyes downfield more often when he buys time, the ceiling is incredibly high for Malik Willis. Seattle's got to hope that they can surround him with the talent required and can give him the time he needs to learn before they let him take the reins of what was once Russell Wilson's role. Seahawks pick 41, Christian Harris, linebacker, Alabama. Harris fell right in Seattle's lap here, and he would be more than hard to pass up. With Bobby Wagner gone, they will need to get Brooks a partner to pair up with in this 3-4 Fangio defense that they want to run. Harris has real great feel for coverage, and he's a superb athlete coming out of Alabama. He also is one of the best processors I've seen a linebacker have in a little bit now. And for him to have all that present in his game before even this year, I noticed it 2 years ago. I think he'll be special. He'll pair up well with Jordan Brooks, and he'll become a staple of this defense early. Great pick by Seattle. Seahawks, pick 42. Sean Ryan, offensive tackle, UCLA. Ryan possesses a numerous amount of film where he just dominates opposing linemen, and I expect it won't take him long to get into rhythm of things. He moves well in space, and he plays to the whistle. Seattle desperately needs O-line help, and having a guy like Ryan, who, as a junior, handled Thibodeau well in their matchups to the point where Thibodeau was a non-factor, that is something to seek out early in this draft class, especially with these great O-line players being taken much earlier. Very solid selection. Broncos, pick 64. Max Mitchell, offensive tackle, Louisiana. While I may not be the biggest fan of Mitchell, a decent portion of scouts are. With the offensive tackle depth depleting right up into the end of the second round here, let's just go get someone who could be a good starter in this scheme as right tackle. They need to get moving in this zone scheme, and Max would sure this offensive line even more for Russell Wilson. You have to protect the investment at all costs, especially with younger and cheaper talent where you can. Very solid as well. If I was bigger on Brandon Smith like most, this would most likely be a B rating. But Brandon Smith from Penn State, he's got the athletic traits. Like he is an obvious athletic talent. He could work really well in this heavy linebacker coverage system where you've got guys dipping in and out of coverage, standing up over the gaps near the center. It's really what they like to do with Alexander Johnson. I think Brandon Smith would fit this role quite well. And he moves really quickly within that space. However, he's got some targeting issues where he tackles high, he doesn't tackle with leverage, he works through traffic quite poorly. I saw him get blocked by a very small guy a couple times where I'm like, you should blow right through him. And he really needs to work on taking these angles a little bit better. So it's mostly just his run defense is where he needs help. However, that pass coverage, if you can figure out the run thing for him, that pass coverage aspect you can get him going with, very exciting, and he fits so well. Seahawks pick 74, Nick Benito, edge, Oklahoma. Honestly, I am surprised Benito was even here, even though this is actually the draft grade I have on him. Benito has been very consistently a good pass rusher in college, where he's gotten back-to-back years of 90 plus pass rushing grades from PFF, which is very difficult to do. Benito is an athlete that can even play as a hybrid who drops in and out of coverage, where sometimes he'll be rushing the passer and other times he'll be faking and rushing the passer to then drop into coverage, which makes it harder for these quarterbacks to actually process what's happening. Now, the fact that he can do this within Seahawks' new defensive scheme is very exciting, as Hurst, who's their new defensive coordinator, does have some experience in 3-3-5 and has mentioned it before that he wants to implement some 3-3-5 in their scheme. Well, we don't have someone here at Seattle that actually can fill the Lorenzo Carter role. Nick Benito does it very well, if not a higher ceiling. Having Benito actually pair up with Taylor really helps their edge pressure rates, and it gives them a new weapon to move around in those 3-3-5 looks. Broncos, pick 69. Marquise Hayes, offensive guard, Oklahoma. Hayes isn't my favorite fit in a wide zone scheme, as I do think there's guys who, if they try to come on his backside in these zone looks, they're going to have an easier time getting it on him than some others. However, at this point, the talent is undeniable. He's incredibly solid all around with a very high floor. He keeps his offensive line cheap and talented, which is never a bad thing to have. And best of all, it keeps Russell Wilson safe and the run game churning. This is excellent value and a long-term move to help fill in gaps in the line as players leave in the future to get bigger contracts. Seahawks pick 106. Cordell Flott, cornerback, LSU. Flott is an underrated player in this draft class, in my opinion. He's got the length and the quick twitch athletics that one needs to play corner in this scheme. Flott has fluid hips and he tacks the ball well. He does need some time to refine his craft, and thankfully the Seahawks are great at doing exactly that with these type of corners. He's incredibly young. He has shown competency against great competition in college in the slot and on the outside. Seattle has the best chance to shape Flott into a very nice starting caliber corner. He just needs a season or two under his belt with him before he might become a problem in this league. Broncos, pick 111. Cade Otton, tight end, Washington. Otton, I do not think is a tight end one. However, as a tight end two, where his routes are going to be very short and close to the line of scrimmage, and he'll be mostly used as a blocker, that to me is much more interesting. Otton would really help this run game get going with Albert O taking the tight end one spot, who's also a fairly decent blocker. Run blocking will be very solid all around on this team now, and he's a decent enough weapon for us on these play action looks that he's really worth the selection here. You help out the run game immensely, which helps, give Wilson these really deep play action shots, and he'll be useful in kind of fitting these little gaps in between zones. Solid selection. Broncos pick 112, Neil Farrell, nose tackle, LSU. Broncos need to refill that interior D line where they can, and Farrell has fallen right into their lap here. Getting a very solid and young nose tackle to play in specific defensive sets really can't hurt picking in the top of the fourth round here. Solid rotational players aren't always easy to come by, or even just solid role players, especially ones like Farrell, who, as young as they are, has played against very good talent and has shown success for them. I think the Broncos will be more than happy to get a guy like Farrell in their midst. Broncos pick 143. Amare Barno, edge, Virginia Tech. It never hurts to gamble on an athlete just later on in day three, and I think that's a great move here by the Broncos. Edge is a need to help pair with Bradley Chubb. Barno showed off his athletic ability at the combine, and with some training, he could be a very nice rotational pass rusher in this defensive scheme. Barno shows nice flashes of play on film. He just needs to get some consistency going in that department and just learn to use his lengthy frame way more often. He relies too much on his elite athleticism and needs to learn he can combine it with power, convert that speed to power, use that length much more often. It's much more exciting to see, and I think Denver can get that out of him. Seahawks pick 150. Zonovan Knight, running back, NC State. Knight was the best back on the board, and he was clearly the best back at NC State. He has quick feet, and he feels motion at the line very well. He hits holes hard. He's a threat in the passing game, showing nice hands and solid route running close to the line of scrimmage. And he's very hard to get a hand on. He's very slippery. Only thing he really lacks is serious power to his game, which in Seattle can be compensated by Chris Carson and DJ Dallas. As a junior with very little tread on the tires, Knight's a very solid back to have rotate in with those guys. Knight is also a much better scheme fit for that offense that they're now running compared to guys I just mentioned in Chris Carson. Seahawks pick 151. Justin Schaefer, offensive guard, Georgia. I am higher on Schaefer than some, and I can understand why he isn't very high. He does lean forward in some of his blocking, and he will get attacked on that aspect at the next level. However, I really do love his movement north-south, not laterally, which is more what you see here, but I love his movement north-south. He's very hard to move when the ball is snapped. He does not get backed up very often. He keeps that opponent right in front of him. He just really drives with that lower half. He's good in these powers, and he just likes to finish guys into the ground. He offers very solid plug and fill play, which this late in the draft is valuable. It's a solid selection for Seattle, who really needs the O-line depth at this point, with the talent being practically gone. Broncos, pick 194. Jerrion Ealy, running back, Ole Miss. He's a productive back that starts slipping in the draft with better players being taken early. He's solid depth, and he can carve himself out a role as a rotational third down back in this league. Ealy is shifty and is very nice on these screen passes, but his size regulates him to certain types of play. Having Javonte Williams take the brunt of the workload will really help with that. Ealy was earlier in draft season considered a third-round prospect by some scouts. Maybe, with going to the Broncos here, they can get that form of him. Seahawks, pick 227. JT Woods, free safety, Baylor. While I haven't done my tape on Woods yet, gambling on athletics in the 7th round is good practice here. Woods has great length at 6'2" to combine with 4.36 speed, and that should be something the Seahawks take here. He could be used immediately on special teams, and we'll see how he can develop here. He might be able to become something under Pete Carroll. Seattle has a history of developing and using their DB as well, as seen in past. Insert basically any player here. And JT Woods could be someone who, as a single high free safety, could get something going. He'll be one to watch. Broncos, pick 246. Charleston Rambo, wide receiver, Miami. Rambo was a wide receiver in college that he had to learn some hard lessons about hard work early. However, now he's overcame it after he transferred to Miami and was an awesome deep threat there. Pairing him up with Wilson, who might be one of the best deep ball throwers in the league, might help the Broncos' deep game get going even more. And they really might be able to rotate him in if he makes the team. He is more than worth the shot here in the 7th round, with how well he's shown to develop over his time while transferring to Miami. We'll see how he can develop. After finishing this dual mock draft, we can see what the Broncos and Seahawks got to walk away with. We got to see the players that were traded, the picks that were traded, and who they selected with the picks they currently had in this draft class. Seattle gets some good players. We can see Drew Lock, who might become something, might not. My hopes aren't incredibly high for him. Shelby Harris has been incredibly productive, and he'll be on a nice contract with them now, with the Broncos assuming most of it. And Noah Fant is a talented tight end. They also get a 1st and 2nd round pick next year. Now, those are probably going to be later, as you would also imagine that a team that has Russell Wilson with as much weapons as he has there will probably have a good year, so those picks will probably be later. However, they're still in the 1st and 2nd round. They still have value. And the players they selected in their heir apparent, Malik Willis, they got their Bobby Wagner replacement in Christian Harris. their Dwayne Brown replacement in Sean Ryan, and they got two really good role players in Cordell Flott and Nick Benito with some talent and developmental depth later on. Now let's see what the Broncos got. The Broncos got Russell Wilson, their franchise quarterback. They got to potentially fix that right tackle position in Max Mitchell and protect their investment in Russell Wilson. They got some really good starters in Brandon Smith and Marquise Hayes, and some rotational guys in Pharrell and Naughton, with some good development in Barno came in the draft with some depth pieces. So, all in all, if you're asking me who I personally would think won this duel, I would probably say the Denver Broncos. Franchise quarterbacks are incredibly hard to come by, and they still have a ton of financial and draft capital to support Russell Wilson after trading for him. But who do you think won? Seattle, who's starting a complete rebuild with a much younger team, or Denver, who wants to be in win it now mode for the next few years? I'll let you come to your own decision on that. I hope you enjoyed this dual mock draft comparing the Denver Broncos outlook compared to the Seattle Seahawks post this Russell Wilson trade. I'll see you next time. Later.